I'm not a supporter of Hamas, but I am a supporter of democracy, and nobody has the right to choose the leadership of the Palestinian people except the Palestinian people themselves. This is ABC. This is just common sense. I don't like Stephen Harper, but I can't pretend he's not the Prime Minister of Canada. I can't choose somebody else and call him the Prime Minister of Canada. My God, the vision of Michael Ignatieff just crossed my mind. Talk about Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Or if I wasn't in a church, I'd say two cheeks of the same backside. I can't appoint somebody else as the leader of Canada. Only the Canadians can choose their government. We wouldn't dream of allowing anybody else, would you, to choose your government? Why then do you insist on choosing the government of Palestine, elected in an election that Jimmy Carter described, and I quote him, as pristine, crystal clear, perfect. It was a perfect election. But because we didn't like the result, we immediately imposed a siege on the Palestinian territories, which has now led to starvation, immiseration of 1.6 million Palestinians, locked up in what the Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, called an open-air prison camp. And not just starved, but as we saw in 22 days in December and January of 2008, 2009, the besiegers locked all the gates so that the 1.6 million people living in a tiny piece of land, 25 miles long, 2¼ miles wide, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and then they rained down death and destruction upon them, using even illegal weapons. It wasn't enough to drop legal bombs, using gas, can you believe it? Using gas, white phosphorus gas. I've seen it in action. In 1982, when Israel invaded and occupied Lebanon, besieged Beirut, began to reduce it to rubble and ash, I visited the hospitals where the children were breathing white smoke from the white phosphorus that was burning within them. That's what it does. When you ingest it, you can't get rid of it. It cooks you, it bakes you to death. And we all saw it live on television, at least if you had access to other than Fox News and CNN and the rest. You saw 1,416 Palestinians killed in 22 days, thousands maimed, 62,000 houses destroyed, which remain destroyed because the siege will not allow in a single brick, hammer or nail to rebuild them. You may have seen, as I did, the little Palestinian girl held aloft by the ambulance man who'd been forbidden to pick up her body for 5 days, minus her leg and her arm eaten off by the dogs, roaming the killing fields of Zaytun, a district of Gaza City. You may have seen the parents carrying their dead and mutilated children into hospitals that had no power, with doctors without clean coats because they had no detergent, lacking medicine, lacking operating equipment, with the electricity going off in the middle of operations, then conducted by candlelight. You may have seen it all. You may have been moved by it. But your government supported it from the first day until the last. Shame on them. Shame on them. And have the perpetrators of this siege, this massacre, been punished? They're never punished. They have never been punished. Israel has broken more United Nations Security Council resolutions than all the countries in the world put together. They've broken more international law than all the countries in the world put together. Yet, and this is the unkindest cut of all, this is the insult that's added to injury, the Palestinians, who are the victims of terrorism, are called the terrorists, and Israel, who practice the terrorism, are called the victims of terrorism. This insult is unbearable so far as the Muslim world is concerned. Palestine has been wiped off the map. Go to your atlas and see. We're always hearing about threats to wipe Israel off the map, even though nobody has the means to wipe Israel off the map, though Israel has the means to wipe everybody else off the map, in possession of hundreds of illegally acquired nuclear weapons, which we know, by the way, because the brave Jew Mordechai Vanunu went to prison for 20 years for telling us. The Palestinians are the ones who have been scattered to the four winds, to the four corners of the earth. The lucky ones living here as refugees in Vancouver, the unlucky in their millions living in rancid, rat-infested refugee camps in the Arab countries alongside Palestine. Generation after generation, some of them now there for 62 years. Others for 43 years. Some of them can even see their own houses from their refugee camps. Can you believe it? The Jenin refugee camp, 1 square kilometer, 14,000 families. They all come from Haifa, a shining city on the sea. If they stand on the roof of their shack with a pair of binoculars, they can actually see their own houses, their own gardens being lived in and enjoyed by foreigners who came from Vancouver, where they already had a house, where they already had a life, where no one was persecuting them, where no one was taking any action against them. And they went there and stole the houses of the people who've lived for the last 60 years in this filthy refugee camp hell. And they call the victims the terrorists. This is intolerable. Israel, on the 31st of May of this year, boarded in international waters a humanitarian aid ship which I co-organized. They murdered 9 unarmed humanitarian aid workers. They wounded scores of others. They kidnapped hundreds of others, took them in shackles to a jail in the Negev desert, and then robbed them of all their possessions, their computers, their phones, their money, even their clothes, even their underwear. They were given their luggage back empty. Some of the computers turned up on sale in a Jerusalem market a few months later. Just ask yourselves this: if Iran had boarded a humanitarian aid ship in international waters and murdered 9, wounded scores, kidnapped hundreds, we'd all be sitting here with tin hats on because we'd be at war with Iran. But Israel suffered no punishment whatsoever for this crime of piracy. in international waters. This double standard is what's driving people in the Muslim world crazy. It's why so many of them are so angry with us, that they want to hurt us, even if it means ending their own lives in so doing. These issues are all linked together because we are locked in a great confrontation. Huntington called it a clash of civilizations. Although the idea that George Bush represented any kind of civilization was very difficult for me to grasp. I always say to Muslim friends, don't confuse these hypocrites with Christians. Christians believe in the prophets, peace be upon them. Bush and Blair believed in the prophets and how to get a bigger piece of them. That's exactly what they believe in. We are locked. We are locked in a confrontation which can lead us all to disaster. Really. The world is deeply unstable and dangerous. My country, the United States, and increasingly your country, are placing themselves in the front ranks of the hated. And there's no future in that for us. There's no future for our children in that. We have to shake ourselves free of the mindset that somebody, God maybe, gave us the right to go around the world invading other people's countries and occupying them. I hate, as a person of Irish background, anything called empire. Once I came home and told my Irish grandfather that the teacher said that Britain had an empire so vast that upon it the sun never set. And my grandfather answered, that's because God would never trust the British in the dark. And I never had cause to doubt that. I don't want to live in a country that's occupying other people's countries. I don't want to live in a country whose government is making people hate me, making people hate and endanger my children and their children. We have to shake ourselves out of the mindset that we have the right to impose political systems or political leaders on other people, which we would never for a moment dream of accepting for ourselves. We are not the special ones. Nobody chose us for this destiny. We have to be prepared to deal with people wherever they are in the world as equals, equal of us. And for those of us who call themselves progressives, I close with the words of a great hero of mine in whose army I march. Comandante Che Guevara said, the man who is not capable of trembling with indignation at injustice visited upon anyone, anywhere, is not a man at all. I ask you to tremble with indignation at the fate of the people of Palestine, at the crimes being committed in our name around the world. Wassalamu alaikum. Peace be on all of you. Thank you very much.